Picture this. You've just had incredible, mind-blowing sex with a woman you're genuinely attracted to. The chemistry was electric, the connection was real, and everything felt perfect. You're lying there, both of you catching your breath, and in that moment, you have a choice to make. What you do in the next 30 minutes will determine whether she becomes emotionally invested in you for the long term, or whether she starts pulling away, making excuses, and eventually disappears from your life entirely. Most men have no idea that this critical window exists, and that's exactly why they lose women who were completely into them just moments before. The brutal truth that no one talks about is this: sex is not the finish line, it's the starting gun. Everything you've done up to this point, all the attraction you've built, all the seduction techniques you've mastered, mean absolutely nothing if you fumble what happens after intimacy. And here's what's going to shock you. What happens after sex is far more important than the sex itself when it comes to creating deep emotional attachment and genuine desire in a woman. This isn't some pickup artist theory or wishful thinking. This is based on fundamental psychology, evolutionary biology, and the real experiences of men who consistently have women falling deeply for them. Robert Greene, in his masterpiece, The Art of Seduction, talks about the concept of post-seduction strategy, though most people completely miss this crucial element. He emphasizes that true seducers understand that maintaining power and creating lasting emotional impact requires careful attention to every moment, especially the vulnerable ones. The moments after physical intimacy are when a woman's psychological defenses are at their lowest, when her emotional state is most malleable, and when her future feelings about you are being programmed into her subconscious mind. What most men do wrong is they either become overly clingy and needy, immediately shifting into boyfriend mode, or they become distant and detached, thinking they need to maintain some kind of alpha dominance through emotional unavailability. Both approaches are absolute disasters, and they stem from a fundamental misunderstanding of female psychology and what actually creates lasting attraction. The men who truly understand seduction, the ones who have women calling them months or even years later, begging to see them again, know that there's a third path, a more sophisticated approach that leverages the unique psychological state that exists after intimacy. Think about what's happening in her mind during and immediately after sex. According to research in evolutionary psychology, particularly the work of Helen Fisher on the brain chemistry of love and attachment, a woman's brain is flooded with oxytocin during physical intimacy. This is the bonding hormone, the same chemical that creates attachment between mothers and children. But here's the crucial part that most men don't understand. This oxytocin creates a temporary state of heightened emotional vulnerability and openness. She's literally in a chemically induced state where she's more likely to form deep emotional connections and positive associations. However, this state is temporary and fragile. If you do the wrong things during this window, you can actually reverse the bonding process and create negative associations that will poison her feelings toward you. It's like having access to her emotional programming for a brief period, and you can either program positive, attraction-building emotions, or you can program negative, repulsive emotions. The choice is entirely yours, but most men make this choice unconsciously, based on their own emotional needs rather than understanding what actually works. Let me tell you about Marcus, a client I worked with who learned this lesson the hard way. Marcus was naturally good with women. He could create attraction, build sexual tension, and get women into bed relatively easily. But he had a pattern that was driving him crazy. Every woman he slept with would seem incredibly into him before sex, during sex, and immediately after. But then within a week or two, they would start becoming distant, making excuses, and eventually ghosting him entirely. He couldn't understand what was happening because the sex was great. The women clearly enjoyed themselves, and there was obvious chemistry. When we analyzed what Marcus was doing after sex, the problem became immediately clear. The moment the sexual encounter was over, Marcus would shift into what he thought was respectful behavior. He would immediately start talking about feelings, asking if she was okay, discussing what this meant for their relationship, and essentially putting pressure on her to define what had just happened. In his mind, he was being a gentleman, but in reality, he was creating enormous psychological pressure during a time when she just wanted to exist in the moment and process her emotions naturally. Even worse, Marcus would then follow up with texts within hours, checking in on her, making sure she was okay and trying to lock down the next encounter. Again, he thought he was being considerate, but he was actually demonstrating neediness and destroying the natural tension and mystery that had made him attractive in the first place. He was taking a woman who was in a chemically induced state of openness and bonding, and instead of allowing that natural process to unfold, he was forcing it, which created resistance and eventual repulsion. The sophisticated approach, the one that actually works, is based on understanding the delicate balance between connection and independence, between showing care and maintaining mystery, between being present and giving space. It's about reading her emotional state accurately and responding in a way that amplifies the positive feelings she's already experiencing, rather than disrupting them with your own agenda or insecurities. David Deida, in The Way of the Superior Man, talks about the importance of presence and emotional mastery in intimate relationships. He emphasizes that a truly attractive man is one who can remain centered and emotionally stable regardless of the circumstances, especially during moments of heightened intimacy and vulnerability. This principle becomes absolutely crucial in the post-intimacy period because your emotional state will directly influence hers. If you're anxious about what she's thinking, she'll pick up on that anxiety, and it will create anxiety in her. If you're needy for validation or reassurance, she'll sense that neediness and it will trigger her own emotional defenses. But if you're genuinely comfortable with yourself, present in the moment, and emotionally stable, she'll feel safe to remain in that open, vulnerable state where deep bonding can occur naturally. The first thing you need to understand is that immediately after sex, her brain is processing an enormous amount of information and emotion. She's not thinking logically about whether she likes you or wants to see you again. She's in a purely emotional, intuitive state, and her subconscious is forming associations and impressions that will influence her future behavior toward you. Your job is not to interrupt this process or try to control it, but to create the optimal environment for positive associations to form. This means that your energy and behavior in these moments should be calm, confident, and naturally affectionate without being clingy or needy. Think of it like this. You want to be like a warm, comfortable fire that she wants to stay close to, not like a blazing inferno that overwhelms her, or a dying ember that makes her feel cold and disconnected. The key is calibration, reading her specific emotional state and responding appropriately. Some women will want to cuddle and be close after sex. Others will need some space to process. Some will want to talk softly about random things. Others will prefer comfortable silence. The men who are truly skilled at this pay attention to these subtle cues and adjust their behavior accordingly, rather than following some rigid formula or trying to impose their own preferences on the situation. Mystery Method, developed by Erich von Markovik, introduced the concept of emotional contagion, the idea that emotions are literally contagious between people, especially during states of heightened intimacy. This principle becomes extremely relevant after sex because she's in a state where she's more susceptible to absorbing your emotional state. If you're feeling confident, satisfied, and genuinely content, she'll absorb those positive emotions and associate them with you. If you're feeling anxious, needy, or uncertain, she'll absorb those negative emotions and they'll create negative associations with the experience and with you. This is why the most successful men I know have developed what I call post-intimacy mastery. They've learned to manage their own emotional state first, ensuring that they're coming from a place of genuine confidence and contentment rather than neediness or anxiety. They understand that this is not the time to seek validation or reassurance from her, but rather to be a source of positive energy that she wants to connect with. One of the most powerful techniques is what I call emotional anchoring. This involves creating positive emotional associations through your behavior and energy that will trigger good feelings about you even when you're not around. For example, if you can make her laugh during this vulnerable time, if you can make her feel genuinely appreciated and desired without being desperate about it, if you can create a sense of comfort and safety while maintaining your masculine edge, you're creating positive emotional anchors that will draw her back to you. But here's where it gets really sophisticated, and this is something that most pickup artists and dating coaches completely miss. The most powerful thing you can do after sex is to demonstrate genuine abundance mentality, not through what you say, but through what you don't need from her. When a woman sees that you're completely content and fulfilled, regardless of her validation or approval, when she realizes that you enjoyed the experience thoroughly, but you're not desperate to repeat it or define it, she experiences something that's incredibly rare in her dating life. a man who doesn't need anything from her. This creates what psychologists call psychological reactance. When someone doesn't need something from us, we naturally become more interested in giving it to them. When someone is desperate for our approval, we naturally become less inclined to give it. This is basic human psychology, but it becomes amplified after sex because of the heightened emotional state she's in. Neil Strauss, in The Game, describes this phenomenon as false disqualification, but he only understood the surface level. The real power isn't in pretending you don't care, it's in genuinely not needing her validation because you have a strong sense of self-worth and genuine options in your life. When this authenticity combines with the post-intimacy vulnerability, it creates an irresistible psychological dynamic. Let me give you a specific example of how this plays out in real life. After an incredible night with a woman, instead of immediately trying to cuddle or have deep conversations about feelings, you might simply lie there contentedly, maybe trace patterns on her skin absent-mindedly, and exist in comfortable silence. If she initiates conversation, you engage naturally, but without agenda. If she wants to cuddle, you're happy to, but you're not desperate for it. You're genuinely enjoying the moment without needing it to be anything more than what it is. This kind of behavior communicates several powerful things simultaneously. First, it shows that you're comfortable with intimacy but not overwhelmed by it. Second, it demonstrates that you have experience with women and aren't treating this like it's the most amazing thing that's ever happened to you. Third, it suggests that you have a rich, fulfilling life outside of this interaction, which makes you more valuable and interesting. Fourth, it creates space for her to pursue you and invest more in the connection, rather than feeling like she needs to resist your pursuit. The timing of your departure or her departure is also crucial, and this is something that requires real social calibration. Leave too quickly, and you seem like you're using her. Stay too long, and you might overstay your welcome, or appear to have nothing else going on in your life. The sweet spot is usually when the energy naturally starts to shift, when the post-intimacy glow begins to fade and normal consciousness starts returning. This is when you might mention something you need to do, not as an excuse, but as a genuine part of your life that you need to attend to. Ryan Holiday, in his work on Stoicism, emphasizes the importance of emotional self-regulation and not being controlled by external circumstances. This philosophy becomes incredibly powerful when applied to post-intimacy situations. A man who has developed true Stoic discipline doesn't become emotionally dependent on the woman's approval or behavior after sex. He enjoyed the experience, he appreciates her, but his emotional well-being doesn't depend on what happens next. This emotional independence is incredibly attractive because it's so rare. Most men become emotionally dependent the moment they have sex with a woman they really like. Their happiness, their self-worth, their peace of mind all suddenly depend on her continued interest and approval. Women can sense this shift immediately, and it usually triggers their emotional defenses because they intuitively understand that being responsible for someone else's emotional well-being is a huge burden. But when you maintain your emotional center, when you remain genuinely happy and fulfilled regardless of what she does or doesn't do, you create a completely different dynamic. She doesn't feel burdened by your emotional needs, which allows her to relax and actually connect with you more deeply. She also experiences the rare pleasure of being with a man who appreciates her but doesn't need her, which is incredibly attractive to high-quality women who are used to men becoming needy and clingy after sex. The follow-up communication is where most men completely destroy everything they've built. They text too soon, they text too much, they try to recreate the intimacy through digital communication, or they go to the opposite extreme and try to play hard to get by not communicating at all. Both approaches are amateur mistakes that reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of female psychology and the post-intimacy dynamic. The sophisticated approach is to communicate in a way that acknowledges the positive experience you shared without putting pressure on her or trying to control the outcome. This might be a simple text the next day saying something like, "Hope your morning is treating you well," or "That was incredible, hope you slept well." The key is that it's warm and appreciative without being needy or demanding a response. It shows that you're thinking about her in a positive way without creating any pressure or obligation. What you're doing is giving her space to miss you and think about you, while also demonstrating that you're a considerate person who appreciates good experiences. You're not trying to recreate the intimacy through text. You're not asking when you can see her again, and you're not seeking validation about how she feels about what happened. You're simply being a positive presence in her life, without being overwhelming or needy. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of acting with virtue, regardless of how others respond. And this principle is incredibly powerful when applied to post-intimacy situations. Your behavior should be guided by your own values and standards, not by what you think will get you the outcome you want. If you genuinely had a good time with her, express appreciation for that. If you're interested in seeing her again, communicate that clearly, but without pressure. If you have other things going on in your life, attend to those things naturally, rather than dropping everything to focus on her. This kind of authentic behavior, guided by genuine values rather than manipulation tactics, creates trust and respect, which are the foundations of lasting attraction and connection. Women can intuitively sense when a man's behavior is coming from genuine appreciation and interest, versus when it's coming from neediness and manipulation. The former is attractive and creates deeper connection, while the latter is repulsive and creates resistance. The men who have women falling for them long-term understand that every interaction, especially the vulnerable ones after intimacy, is an opportunity to demonstrate their character and values. They use these moments not to try to lock down the woman or get validation from her, but to show who they really are when no one is watching, when there's no immediate benefit to be gained from putting on an act. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in advanced seduction, the idea that true attraction is created not by what you do to get something from someone, but by who you are when you don't need anything from them. After sex, when the immediate goal has been achieved, is when your true character is revealed. Are you someone who becomes needy and clingy the moment you get what you want? Are you someone who becomes distant and cold to maintain some kind of power dynamic? Or are you someone who remains genuinely attractive because your attractiveness comes from your authentic self, rather than from techniques and strategies? The answer to this question will determine not just whether she wants to see you again, but whether she becomes genuinely invested in you for the long term. Women who have experienced a man with true post-intimacy mastery often describe it as unlike anything they've experienced before. They talk about feeling completely relaxed and appreciated, without feeling pressured or judged. They describe a sense of safety combined with excitement, comfort, combined with mystery. This is what separates the men who have occasional success with women from the men who have women genuinely falling for them and staying attracted long-term. It's not about the techniques you use to get her into bed, it's about the man you reveal yourself to be once you're there. And the beautiful thing about developing this kind of authentic attractiveness is that it makes your entire life better, not just your dating life, because it's based on real personal development and emotional maturity rather than manipulation and tricks.